second, and then after that, no longer accepting answers. So the first topic is, and this one's like not hard, but I feel like if it were me, I wouldn't know because I'd have to think about it. So, a mammal. A mammal.
Ooh.
One. I think the last person I saw was like Christy, I think, or Nathaniela. Like, it was around there. The first one's more like a practice because low-key, I have to think about.
Okay. Whoever said whales does not get a point.
I said beluga. Does that count?
I didn't hear very well. What was the prompt?
So we're just going back to our reflection questions that we answered last week. So they are in the chat. And
yeah,
just, and you have all of them, just like a highlight of like, you know, the one that resonates the most with you.
Okay, so I believe that like the greatest thing for us right now is just like it's a climate revolution, a social revolution, and an economic revolution that we're kind of witnessing right now. Because like personally, this is the most important thing for me, because right now we're trying to fix all of the mistakes that the generations before us have just been building and building upon. And I think it's really like up to us to see like if we continue down the dark path that everybody before us has chosen, or if we're actually going to be able to set a positive outlook and create a better world for the generations after us. Also, I believe that sometimes adults think that when youth want to do something, it's out of like rebellion. Like sometimes they don't really accept that we have these actual ideas that we believe within ourselves, and it's something that should be respected. And I also think that to increase youth engagement in politics, it should just be like advertised as a necessity. Like we have the right to vote, so we should take advantage of it. And we should, even though our education system has failed us, we should still find a way to educate ourselves. That's pretty much what I have to say. And I guess I'll choose Aisha.
The question that stood out to me the most was the one that said, what are misconceptions and stereotypes that adults and young people have about the youth and to make changes? I thought that the main thing I think is that they think that because they don't face the same problems that the youth does, they don't feel like it's considered something that they should take part in and change with them. And since the youth doesn't get the help of the adults or the support that they need, they aren't able to make the change. So it just like lowers their mind about it, and they're held back from making changes for their issues because the adults just feel like, oh, this is not something we need to do because it won't affect us. That's what they think. But it's going to affect the youth right now and their future. So that's why I think it's something that they don't take part in. And I want to give to Alexandra.
I put the same question, and I wrote, let's see. I said adults believe youth to have little life experience and not have enough responsibility or depth to make change. Adults find youth to be impractical and indecisive. And then youth internalize this, and then they believe that they're undeserving and incapable of taking action, which is really sad. And once you hear so many times that, you know, your opinion is irrelevant because you're not old enough, or you don't have a family, or you don't have a job, you kind of just keep thinking this, and then you keep your opinions to yourself until you get older. Ellis.
I'm sorry, Ellis, we don't seem to be able to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Very mean. Right. I would say for the generation, like Gen Z, I guess. For me, I would say we're a bit overshadowed, like in terms of when it comes to politics and our opinions. So yeah, that's one thing. Because we're now like old, gray, and have arthritis and stuff like that. So yeah.
I'd say climate change. Most of the big issues are showing up now. Now that the other generations and the boomers ruined it for us, most of the disasters that we're facing is on our generation, and also global pandemic, which I don't think any of the generations have faced before us, recent ones. And personally, I've been affected by it. Like some people where they did get coronavirus. So I feel like that's the issue for not just Gen Z, but all generations right now specifically.
I hope everyone who may have had family members or friends who have coronavirus, you guys are within my prayers, so just want to say that. Does anyone want to add on?
I wanted to add on and say that specifically our generation in high school, the final years and everything, it's we're learning how to deal with going to school online and get the same education and still learn. And that's kind of what I wanted to add on.
I just wanted to say, I hope everyone's okay and that everyone's taking care of themselves, especially now with a lot going on. And I think, Lauren, you're right. I mean, we're on Zoom right now too. Usually this would be in person. So it's definitely something that a lot of people have to think about too.
Oh, I want to add on to myself. Another thing is that as we grow up, so if we compare teenagers from now to maybe 1950, I feel like the curriculum in school has gotten much useless in a way. Because we've been learning more stuff that we don't need. Like I've said before, geometry and stuff like that. Geometry and stuff like that. So I feel like, back then it was just basic stuff, 2 + 2, but now it's just stuff that we basically don't need. And of course, we need some structure and things like that. But of course, it just sounds like it gets too much. Geometry. I'm done.
Sorry, go.
I feel like an issue that doesn't really pertain to inequality, but is very targeted at our generation is just the internet and social media. I don't know, I feel like we're the only generation. I mean, we are the only generation that's grown up with social media and it's been so embedded in our lives that I feel like as a generation we have our priorities messed up. We see stuff, we see people wearing stuff, and we just want that instead of wanting. I know people who would rather spend $600 on shoes than $600 on food. And I feel like as a generation, we're very vain and we just don't have our priorities straight.
I agree. And I also wanted to add on to the fact that social media is also an issue that we have because also if you think before social media, if a teenager were to do something, right? Or anything like that. You couldn't record it, you couldn't take pictures of it for the whole world to see, and then they wouldn't. But it's now we're just being judged so harshly, being on social media platforms and having way more insecurities than people did before because we're so attached to other people and test over what other people are doing instead of making ourselves and other people that we care about priorities. And also, I think that our generation is also very underestimated because we are sometimes putting our priorities and other things, but we can also be powerful enough to have our own ideas and be able to make changes. And sometimes people don't think that we can't do that.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe this is just, okay. So I guess in history, there's a history of redlining within cities, and that kind of creates different neighborhoods, and they're often kind of created based around race and different socioeconomic backgrounds. And then and I guess that holds up the education, the institution of education, at least in New York City, just because lots of times schools kind of operate through the districts that they are surrounded by. And so oftentimes kids who are usually kids of color and might have like be in like a lower socioeconomic status go to schools with less resources and might be more criminalized in the schools they go to and have less opportunities. And then the core problems of that are like the school to prison pipeline and like and just like it's kind of cyclical in the way that like it leads to them making less money when they grow up because they have like the lack of opportunities. Did I do this right? Is that like
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's a perfect example. So like redlining has been shown historically, and then that leads to discrimination in education because of lack of funding, and then that then leads to the school to prison pipeline. So just like how she did it, y'all. Is anyone else? You don't have to go in order. You can just shout out random things.
For systems, could we put police discrimination?
To add on to policing, it's I think the criminal justice system overall, and that's because like we will have problems such as the cash bail system where people of lower income can't pay for bail, so they're stuck in prison until their court date, which can be years. And also just overall the how the criminal justice system affects Black people of color at a higher rate than white people, and that connects to the history of mass incarceration and how the 13th Amendment allows for a form of slavery if you are incarcerated.
Also, could one of the core problems be racial profiling?
I think if we want to do like the history part of policing, like I like just recently I've learned that like policing in America started as kind of like a slave catching like task force, something like that. And so like the fact that it started like that kind of makes sense as to why it functions the way it doesn't make sense, but it kind of shows how the injustice of it has started from that history of it being used as like a slave catching task force.
Anything else? I know y'all have some good ideas.
For history, I think we have to mention slavery because all of these problems are stemming from Black people being enslaved so many years ago. Because even when they were freed, they still weren't free because they were sharecroppers, and then they have constantly been viewed as less than in society since slavery.
To add on.
Sorry, go ahead.
Here you go.
Okay.
And
Go Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So for history, can we add in how like everything pretty much started because white people thought they're like the inferior race?
For history, could we put literacy test?
I don't know if I'm making a stretch when I say this, but I feel like racism also has a lot to do with misrepresentation.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
I'd say like me thinking of it this way, say if we had like a person of color trying to run for a higher place in government, like say president, I feel like seeing that maybe there are some predominantly racist states, I feel like, and it's older people, I feel like if they vote, they would just continue to vote for a non-person of color to keep the person of color from winning the election. Or yeah, hopefully that made sense.
Well, it doesn't make sense, but we understand what you said, right?
Essentially the lack of representation within the government.
Say that again?
The lack of representation within the government, is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. And do you think that would be a core problem, system, or history?
I think that would probably be a core problem.
You go on to complain about other people's lives, like mind your business. Or if you're gonna mind other people's business, try helping them instead of complaining about things that doesn't concern you.
I want to add on to TV shows. I'm pretty sure you all are aware of Narcos, which gives off a very bad stereotype about Mexican people, but also Colombian people, which is really, really annoying. This is just like a whole entire show dedicated to drug trafficking and murder. And it's just like that gives off the vibe that like, oh yeah, everybody who comes from those countries come to America to do this, to kill people, to sell drugs, stuff like that. So,
And while we're on that note, I'm a little bit surprised that we don't have more comments about, the recent administration. I think the Muslim majority, the ban of immigration of people from several Muslim majority countries is like one. I think there's a lot of others that, sort of factor in.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just a bit surprised we didn't talk about like the border camps yet, the missing like 3,000 children, Dream, my bad, Dream, I don't know why I said that, Dreamers, and the Dream Act, etc., etc. But, that could be because maybe you guys don't have in-depth knowledge of all that, but yeah, those are also some things.
I just remembered something. I heard that ICE created this like fake university thing, but I forgot what it was called. But apparently they created a fake university to attract undocumented students and then later like deport them, which is such a bad like move.
That did happen, and in many ways we can even say that higher education. I don't know if I can say this, but I was just going to say, because I'm not supposed to give ideas, but higher education, to what you said, Maria, is used as a trunk, right? As used as a institution that keeps these unfair practices at play in many ways. Yeah. Also, to add on to what you guys were saying about media, you guys are completely right about everything that you said. Like for example, the terrorist character of like the Muslim man with the beard being like a terrorist all the time in the movies definitely contributed to a lot of Islamophobia in the post 9/11 world.
I think also that movies or scenes like this are very overlooked because imagine if a person that is younger than all of us, like you know what I'm saying? So what about if they were watching and if they didn't have like an open enough mentality to think that all that they are seeing that is true? So they are now going to go to society and look at people that look like those people that were presented in those movies or in those scenes. They are going to look at them different, which is when like conflict is going to start. So I think that it's been happening for a long time. So I mean, I don't want to say that there's no hope into changing that, but I think that because it is so like people are just so used to creating this type of movies and just thinking that they can get away with it. Now like I'm seeing like people might tweet about it and like say like that's not cool, but I think that at the end of the day people can just like creators of movies or people that do the scripts, they might just think of it like they will get over it, and I think that that's a very big problem that we are now facing, that people just like give us like an apology for now, but then others might keep going and doing this type of movies and type of stuff, influencing people that might not have that like them. I don't want to say like a bad mentality, but like not as a very mature mentality to understand that not everything that they're seeing is essentially true.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is like the Hollywood, the trunk of the issue, right? That a lot of the movies or shows or media that is peddled by, the American film industry does not exactly, have, it's I'll just say it's very easy to stereotype in media, right? I think that's what you're getting at.
It's time effective, but like what are the things that are like the roots to this issue? For example, I think one would be gender roles clearly, like in history, what it looked like to have men as like the more like the masculine and like working, and okay, someone's in religion, that's also a big one, so that can go in the roots. I'm gonna put gender roles in here. Class, I think we're just gonna put them in the chat. So we have the generation, that's true, but I think what in the generation makes it, like that misogyny, that's huge. Also like I wanna say it because I feel like someone should say it, but it starts with P, and it ends with a Y, I think. Yeah, it ends with a Y. I don't want to say it for you guys, but
Rhyme with malarkey.
no.
The patriarchy. Wait, is that
patriarchy?
The patriarchy.
We don't like her. We don't love her.
We don't like the patriarchy.
We don't love the patriarchy or like her. Patriarchy. Never like write it out and just wait for that red squiggly line under. And racism. Yes, Chelsea, very true. Racism and
indeed. Ooh.
I don't know if there's a larger umbrella to put in things like homophobia and transphobia, but that's
colonization.
What?
Another root cause we can put colonization.
I was just about to say that. He said, "Oh, colonization."
And then I think we could get into so kind of also what the rhetoric is in political spheres.
Who are you, Peppa Pig? Peppa Pig, who are you?
Hi, sorry, Tiffany. I didn't get a chance to add my name. Yeah, my Wi-Fi was really bad before.
Yeah, I think, did you miss the whole session? I think.
No, I missed like I think the last like 15 minutes of it, but I was part of the article reading.
Okay, we're just finishing up, and I'm gonna send you into immigration for the last couple minutes, and then we're coming back together very soon.
Okay, thank you.
Use metal straws or like stainless water bottles, because it would kind of be something like that. So I feel like even if we were to do it, I feel like maybe now is not maybe the right time, but maybe in the long run, maybe it'll happen. Who knows?
I was just, I know that we were largely talking about like sustainability and climate change related, but I thought I would just add on to this conversation, but focus more on the aspect of environmental justice and environmental racism. I feel like the core problems are obviously racism and like the imbalance of power, because like the systems and structures in place like redlining and the unequal distribution of power create a system in which those in lower income communities or communities of like people of color are going to have less power and have less of a say as to what kind of like waste facilities are going into their neighborhoods, where they live, where their schools are, the kind of like things that they have access to. All those things contribute to the fact that these communities and these vulnerable populations are going to be more disproportionately impacted by all of these like effects of climate change. But yeah, that's my opinion.
I think another root or an underlying historical cause might be the Industrial Revolution, and how we're in this tricky spot where, you know, we mass produce all these things, plus we use coal and fossil fuels, and it's great for the economy. And if we switched over to more environmentally friendly energy sources like wind or wave turbines or any of those things, it's really expensive to get those going. So I think a root cause is just a money thing.
For another root cause, for some reason I can't write on the doc, but I believe that another root cause is like, plastic is such a product that's depended on. Like so many years went by of us just using plastic, like plastic after plastic after plastic, and nobody really like talking about things that actually are harmful. So like it would be like, for instance, someone would be like, oh, we can't just automatically switch to something else. Like it has to be plastic because plastic helped us do this, plastic is helping us do that. And like, it turns into like a whole thing where, oh, like we depend on plastic, like we have to have plastic. It can't be anything else other than just not plastic, like it has to be plastic, which is also really bad because I'm pretty sure, I don't
it because it upholds like toxic systems of power that often put Black and brown people in underserved communities at risk. And is there anybody in my group who wants to sum up anything that I missed?
I can go. I was just putting this note now that I kind of made the connection. So we were talking a lot about how like communities of color are often disproportionately affected by the climate crisis, which isn't a surprise to anyone here probably. But I was kind of making the connection to voter suppression because I think it's kind of just another way to continue to oppress certain communities. So like whether it's like through voting, like through like closing polls or through making transportation harder, or if it's in this way of just like perpetuating the cycle of like using plastic and having to buy like cheaper materials because they can't afford anything else, and then it comes back and creates pollution, which then like could create like higher rates of asthma in certain communities. So I think it's kind of like all a cycle and all kind of just works together. That was my takeaway today.
Thank you. Climate justice. And a beautiful tree as well. Gender justice.
Can everyone see our tree?
Yes.
Very beautiful tree.
Yes, she's beautiful on the inside.
On the outside.
Honestly.
Some of the things we touched upon, kind of the roots of gender justice is a very broad topic. And some of our roots were things like colonization, patriarchy, racism, misogyny, gender roles, and religion. Does anyone from our group want to further discuss why these things were chosen and how they interact with gender justice as a whole?
If I could speak, I think that I just want to talk a little bit about diet culture and the patriarchy. Like, for instance, in media, often the women that we see are very thin, and they're in that traditional, like, stick thin, like, ideals that the media has set upon us. But it's not healthy and it's unrealistic for women of like any kind of women to be set to these standards. Like, for example, when we look at sitcoms, we see the wife, like usually the mother of the household, she doesn't get that much character development, and she's also often portrayed as much younger than the man, more conventionally attractive than the male, the husband, while the husband is often like the joke, like kind of like the laughing stock of the sitcom, and he's more unconventionally attractive, but this is seen as acceptable because in media all that's really expected of women is to look pretty, whereas men are allowed, they're put up to a lesser standard because of their gender.
Thank you, gender
Yeah,
justice.
talking about, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Chelsea.
Oh, I was talking about gender roles and how it does make a big difference, because I've said this statistic before, but for every dollar a man makes, a woman makes 81 cents. And when you're Native American or Asian or Hispanic or Mexican, that just goes even lower, and that pay gap really, really it just affects you as a minority. And religion, it does and yeah, religion, it does stand like where you should be, I forgot her name, but like she was saying earlier, how you do have to play into certain roles, and if you do, then you're just sinning and doing something really bad, and you have to hold up to the standard that is not a standard that you might not want to do, and is something that you can't always keep up with.
Thank you, gender justice. Great points. We are going to move on to immigration justice.
Yes. So I think our group had a very varied discussion about immigration that really spanned a lot of topics. So anyone from our
As
group want to speak?
immigration does. It's a
As
very
we usually
complex
do.
topic.
There's a lot of interesting keywords I'll say here that unconventional, I'll say. So if anyone in our group wants to elaborate on those.
Okay, I will I put Karens, and at first I was gonna put it as a joke, but then I thought more about it, and it was like, okay, this is like actually true. We see what we will label as Karens on social media, like telling people like, oh, well, this is America, you should speak English. Oh, you don't like it here, go back to your country. And then I saw a meme and it was talking about like Americans somewhere like abroad asking if somebody speaks English, and I don't know, like, but yeah, I put parents.
I know that Frank at the end of the meeting, he spoke about how America, or like the US, we don't really have like a set language unlike other countries. And since time ran out, I obviously couldn't speak on it, but I like completely agreed with that. I feel like that's what makes this country, that's what's supposed to make this country so special, is that we're so diverse with everyone who's like in the country. And I know that's like how it was when they first made the rule, like not the rule, but when they first started calling America like the melting pot or whatever, or really New York City. But I feel like with all these like different, with these new like immigration laws and rules and everything, that makes it so much harder for people with different backgrounds to come into the country. It taking away, I don't know how to say it, but it's not as diverse as it could be if they actually set realistic rules and I don't know, like the citizenship test for immigrants who want to become a citizen to this country. That's supposedly supposed to be great. But yeah.
Thank you so much, Maria and Marla.
So next up is the Inequality and Affordability group. So our group thought the following. So when it came to what do we feel are the core problems related to our issue, our group members said economic mobility, inequality, racism, passion or education for politics, why it matters, who it's affecting, how can things change, and awareness to the problem, ignorance, and redlining. And if anyone from our group would like to read the next segment aloud to the group, please feel
I
free.
will. So for the middle one is redlining, justice system, media representation, justice system again, capitalism, American value of self-interest, and voter suppression. So I just wanted to tap up on like the capitalism part. I personally say capitalism and socialism because I feel like those two systems work for certain people. So I feel like maybe if you're like maybe in the middle class, I feel like um what is called? I forgot what it's called. A socialism might work better for you, but let's say if you're richer, I feel like that like capitalism might work better for you. So I feel like maybe if we can find a middle ground between the both, find the good and bad of each one, and try to make something out of that, then we can have a better future for what the topic is.
Wait, can you expand on how socialism is better for the middle class? Because socialism to do anything different than capitalism is toxic to the middle class.
That is a
Okay,
fascinating question, but it's one that I don't think we're going to have time to get into. So let us bookmark that because I think we will get much more into different systems, capitalism and socialism within your group. So hold those thoughts, Christopher and Saskia. Do you want to share I think you have your last column.
Yeah, who wants to share that? Christopher can do it or someone else.
Oh, okay. Why do these structures exist? Benefits, the idea of scarcity, greed, monopolies, big businesses, way of thinking, prejudices, and security complex. Should I expand?
In the future, but I think for tonight, we're going to leave it at that because these are all big ideas and great things to put out there. And we've had a request to share these in the Slack, which we will, and hope that the conversation will continue there. But for now, I think we're going to move on to racial justice.
Okay, so this is my tree. Yes, I drew it, and yes, I wrote, but I'm gonna give my group the attention now. So thanks, Nushat. Anyone that wants to speak can go ahead and speak. Racial justice, come on. I know y'all had some good ideas.
So we kind of started with how the history led into the systems and into the core problems, and how the systems and the core problems are kind of like a cycle. And so for history, we talked about supremacy, slavery, the 13th Amendment, giving freedom, 13th Amendment abolishing slavery, but then allowing a form of slavery in the incarceration system, and how that history led into the systems such as education, discrimination, policing, and the problems with the criminal justice system, and the Jim Crow laws, black codes, sharecropping, and how that's gone on to core problems where you have job discrimination, racism, institutional oppression, voter suppression, racial profiling, the school to prison pipeline, and how there's so many aspects to the problems in racial inequality.
Anyone else? Okay, so yeah, one thing that I would add is that when we were discussing this, we had a lot of issues deciding what belonged in what part, and we came to the conclusion that a lot of these things just perpetuate in a constant cycle. So that's something to think about, not only for my issue, but for all these issues, how we constantly perpetuate these things, whether they be systems, a part of history, or core problems.
Great points. So as we can see, we got a lot of issues, and they stem from systems and histories, and we're going to keep talking about these. Not tonight, don't worry, we're finishing up, but we're really going to be talking about the soil, right? How do we change the soil that these issue trees grow in? And what role can or do voting and electoral politics play? As well as like, what do we need to know to make positive change? And what do others need to know about our issue to make positive change? So we are going to end for tonight, but we are going to put in the Slack, and would love if everyone could log on to the Slack, both the feedback form for folks to share feedback. I'll put it in here as well. And the questions for the prep work that Frank shared before about interviewing at least 2 people for their perceptions of voting. That's going to be really important grounding for our next session. And we also want to remind you to contact your state assembly member tomorrow about OVR, online voter registration. As Jessica shared, it has now passed in the Senate, but in order to become law, and to enfranchise young people, poor people, people of color disproportionately, we need the state assembly to pass that as well. So any last thoughts or questions before we split for the evening?
I had a question about, I know that in the beginning of the program, a bunch of like notifications and announcements were sent out, and one of them was an important meeting that was supposed to be coming up. I don't know, you guys said that it was optional if you wanted to come in, if it was safe or not, or if you could just like join over Zoom or Google Meet or whatever. And I was wondering when that is exactly.
So great question. And sorry, I put the wrong URL in, but we'll put the right one in Slack. Our day of action, the optional part is whether it's in person. It is something that, you know, everyone we ask to participate in unless there's a religious interference. So that is the 8th of August. And we'll be talking more about that in future sessions. You'll have a menu of opportunities. Many of them are online. For those who do want to do something in person that is borough-based, we're going to try to have a few opportunities there. But we will talk about that more next week and the following week. Okay, we are already at 9:06, so we won't close out with a ritual or a one word, but we loved seeing everyone's visuals. We will put them in the Slack. If there's anything that we don't put in the Slack that you want to see, just let us know and we will put it there. We will see you next week, armed with the interviews that you have done about voting, ready to tell us about contacting your assembly members, thinking more about these issue trees and how we're going to change the soil. We hope you have wonderful, wonderful weeks. Thanks for your great thinking and great conversations tonight. Bye all.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye.